In this video, we'll add a spaceship dropper as an enemy in our game. It will drop enemy spaceships into the game and they'll shoot bullets towards our player. So, let's begin. To get started, we're going to need 3 new sprites. The first of them being a spaceship. And we'll find them in the red file, and you can just upload this alien ship new red. That's the first file we'll need. And we'll rename the sprite to enemy spaceship. Next, we would need the enemy spaceship dropper. And we can find this at the small ship animation. And we'll choose number 3. And we'll open this sprite as well. And we'll name this enemy spaceship dropper. And finally, our third sprite, if we go to the red file, we would find a bullet sprite, the bullet red. We can open this as well and rename this to enemy bullet. And we would want to resize all of them. So we would start with the enemy bullet, make this 35, and we would go to our enemy spaceship and resize this to 40. And then we would need our enemy spaceship dropper. We would want that at size 70. Okay. Now we would need to make all of our sprites face right, so we can enter the costume in each of our sprite. Make sure that we have the select options selected, and then just rotate all of them so that they're facing right. And then we can do our enemy spaceship dropper next. And then our enemy bullet. Now we should go to our enemy spaceship dropper, and we need to select one of these boosts because we want the boost to be the same length. So we can select the smaller one and delete it. And then select this bigger one and click copy and then paste it. And then we can move this pasted one right here. Now that we have our spaceship boost finished, we can go to the code. And we would first start coding the enemy bullet sprite. So we can go to variables and create 2 new variables for the sprite. The first one being called enemy bullet X. This would be the X position of the enemy bullet, and the second one being enemy bullet Y. And then we can select control and when I start as clone, and go to looks and select the show block, and then go to motion and select the go to block as well. We'd also want a point in direction, and we'd want our bullet pointing downwards, so 180. And then we can go to variables and make the enemy bullet X the X position it spawns at, and the enemy bullet Y the Y position it starts at. Now we can disable these last 2 variables, and we can go to control. Then we'd select the repeat until loop and put it right under the pointing direction. And then we'd go to operators, and then we'd select the OR operator and put it right here. And we'd want to see if we're touching any 2 things. So we can go to the touching block and place it in the first block in our operator and place it again in the second. So then we would state if we touch the player or if we touch the edge of the screen, then we can stop what we do in this repeat until loop. And what we'll be doing is moving 20 steps, about the same speed as the normal bullet. And then we can go to control and select wait 0.05 seconds and then delete this clone. Next, we would want to go to our player sprite, and we would want to add a few more things that it can be damaged by. So we can go to the operators and select OR. So we'd only need one OR operator, as the only new thing we're adding that can damage us is the bullet. So we'd say if touching the bullet, but make sure to specify this as the enemy bullet. And now that we've added this as one of the parameters that we can be hit by, we can go to our bullet and add a few more things that can destroy it. So we can go to the touching and add 2 more, and go to operators and add 2 more OR statements, and then grab the middle of this and place it right here, and then go to the touching block and place it here, and 1 more touching block right here. And now we want to see if we're touching either our enemy spaceship dropper or enemy spaceship, and then we can grab this and put it right back in our repeat until statement. Where's the middle? Right here. Okay, now that we have a jumbled up OR operators, we can finally start setting up the different enemies in our game. So we can start off with the enemy spaceship dropper, and we'd want to start with moving it around our screen. We'll have it move left and right as long as there are no enemies on the screen. So we can go to control and select the when I start as clone, and then go to motion and select the go to X, and we'll start it at -290, and then for the Y we'll have it as 125, and then we can go to looks and select the show block and then have it point right. So we'd choose point in direction 90, and this would be the default position of it, and we don't want anything going above of our enemy spaceship dropper. Whilst it drops these spaceships, we want the spaceships to be under them. So in order to do that, we need to change its layer position. So let's go to our enemy spaceship dropper and go to this block right here, go forward, and would have it go forward 12 layers. Next we can go to our control panel and select the forever loop, and then we can go to looks and select the show block, and then go to control again and repeat until right after it. And then you can go to operators and select the greater than operator, and go to motion, select the X position, and then repeat until it's greater than 290. So we'd have our spaceship moving all the way until it reaches the X position 290, and once it does, then we would hide it. So now let's add the moving component, and we can do this by saying point in direction 90 and then have it move 7 steps. And then after we hide it, we'd want to wait until there's no spaceships in the scene, and to do that we'd create a new variable called spaceships present, and we can go to control and select the wait until block, and then go to operators and select the equals to operator and say wait until our spaceships present equals to 0. And to start off, whilst we start as a clone, we'd want our spaceships present to equal to 0 when I start as clone. Now we'd finally want to start moving left. So once the spaceships present is equal to 0, we'd wait 3 to 7 seconds. And after we wait this amount of time, we'd show back, and then we'd start moving left. So we can duplicate this repeat until statement and put it right under the show. And instead of waiting until X position is greater than 290, we can remove this, go to operators and select the less than operator, and wait until it's less than -290. And we'd want to point in the left position, so we can do this, click stop, and then after this we would want to wait this random amount of time, and that's all we'd need. So we don't need to show this twice. We can remove the bottom one, and yeah, that's all we would need. And the reason we have this show at the top and right here is because we want, after we've waited this amount of time, it will then go back to the beginning of the loop, and we want it to show because initially it has hidden itself. So now we need to create a brand new message, and we can go to events and call this message spaceship dropper, and then we can click OK. And then when I receive spaceship dropper, we would want to click looks and say hide, and we can go to control and we will wait, and we can go to operators and choose 3 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, and then we can create a clone of myself. And then we would go to variables and make a brand new variable called enemy spaceship dropper health, and this will allow our player to hurt the enemy spaceship. So you can go to the variable and set it to 5, and then we can go to a previous sprite that is an enemy, for example the enemy mothership, and we can just copy the health, this one that says if touching bullet. You can just grab it and then place it right here into the enemy spaceship spawner. And then we would say change, make sure to change these variables, change enemy spaceship dropper health, and then right click on this block right here that says mothership health and change it to enemy spaceship dropper health. And then we can change a variable called spaceship. So we'll create a new variable called spaceship droppers destroyed, and we would go right here where the variable spaceship droppers destroyed and change that by 1. So we can move on to the next part of our enemy, and it will be spawning in these enemy spaceships, and we'll call this in a when I start as clone block, and we'll go to forever and select 2 if statements, and there'll be one on top of the other, and then we can select an operator. We'd select the AND operator, place it into the first and second if statement, and then we can select a less than operator, place it in the first and second AND statement, and then a greater than operator in the second statement for our first one and the second statement in our second if statement. And then we'd want to go to motion and select the X position block, which gives the X position of our clone. So we can put this in each of the first operators, and the parameters would be 107, -93, -107, and 93. So what this code is basically doing is, as long as we're in this first one is positive, so if we're around here we can drop a spaceship, or if we're around here we can drop a spaceship, is basically what the if statement is looking for if we're in a specific X position. So we can go to our variables and create another one called enemy ship, and then position, and select OK, and we'll set this enemy ship position here, and we'll set it in the second if statement as well, and then would set this first one to 100, and the second one to -100. And then we can go to control and create a clone of the enemy spaceship, and we can duplicate it and do this in each if statement. Now we can go to our variables, just hide these unnecessary ones, and then go to control and select the wait block, and would wait 0.05 seconds just so it does not spawn more than one spaceship. And you can put this under each clone, creation of clone. And now that we've done all this, all we'd want to do is go to looks, bring out the hide block and click hide. And we can do the same for the rest of the sprites, just hide all of them. Or we can just click right here to hide it as well. And finally, we would need another variable called should spawn spaceship dropper, as we have for all of these. So you can create the variable called should spawn spaceship dropper. We can click OK and then bring this out, and as we did for all the other sprites, we look if this is true before we actually spawn it. So we can go back to our enemy spaceship dropper, get an if statement, and select the operators and look if it is equal to capital TRUE, capital true. And then we can just put this right here when I receive space dropper, or we can rename this to spawn spaceship dropper. Then we can click OK, and after that this should work about right. We can just go to the variables and disable should spawn spaceship dropper, and we can move on to the enemy spaceship. And all we really need to do here is set up a few when I start as clone blocks. So we can go to when I start as clone, 1, 2, 3, 4 should be about right. And you can go to the wait until block and select a touching block, and then say if we're touching bullet. So we wait once the enemy spaceship starts as a clone, we want to wait until we're touched by a bullet, and then we would wait 0.05 seconds, and after we've been touched by the bullet, we would want to change a variable. We'd want to change the enemy spaceship's present. Here it is. And then we'd want to change it by -1. And then we can duplicate this and set it. So when I start as clone, we change it by 1. And after we've been touched by a bullet, we change it by -1. And then we'd want to create another variable called spaceships destroyed. This is not the spaceship dropper, but just the normal spaceships. And then we can go to set to change spaceships destroyed by 1, so that we can keep score of how many spaceships are destroyed. And then we would want to set the explosion X and then duplicate this, so we can also select explosion Y, and we can go to the motion and make this X position and Y position, and place this right under the change spaceship destroyed, and go to clone, create a clone of the red explosion, and then we delete this clone. Now we'd want to set up the position that our enemy spaceship starts in, so we can go to motion, and first we'd want it to point downwards, so it's facing the player, so 180. And then we can go to the go to block and go to variables and select the enemy ship position as we've set up earlier. And we can put this right here, and then we'd want our Y to be 125. We can go to looks and then show our enemy spaceship and then go to control and select the forever block, and then all we'll need to do is go to variables and set our enemy bullet X, and then duplicate this and enemy bullet Y to the X and Y position of the clone of the enemy spaceship. And then we'd want to create a clone in control, create a clone of the red bullet, or the enemy bullet rather. So let's click stop. And once you create a clone of this enemy bullet, we just want to wait 0.5 seconds. Or let's wait this time at the beginning. Okay, now all we need is the movement of our delightful enemy spaceship. So to set this up, all we'll need to do is find out if we're on the left or the right of the screen. So we can go to two if statements, one after the other, and then put a forever loop in each one. And then we look in operators and put an equal operator in each, and go to the X position. And now we want to look if our X position is 100, or it can equal to -100 instead. And then we would go to control and select 1, 2, and then 3, 4 repeating two blocks. And then we would look if our X position, so go to operators and select the less than operator, and then a greater than operator in the second one, a less than operator in the final one, and a greater than operator in the third one. So then we can go to our motion and put X position in each of these blocks. And then we can go to the change X, and we would not want to use move in this instance because move moves the sprite in the position it's facing, and we don't want it to move downwards. So we'll use a change X instead and have it move leftwards in the first and last block, and then change X by +3 instead in the second and third repeat until statements. And I think that's all we'll need. We can go to variables, disable this, and after we set up the change X positions, all we'd need to do is set up the positions. So first we'd say if X position is less than 0, and then after that if it's greater than 185, and then we can put 0. Oh no, we can undo that and put 0 here and say -185. Make sure this one is a negative, and go to backdrops, and instead we'll spawn our spaceship dropper. Set should spawn spaceship dropper to true, and set spaceship dropper destroyed to 0 and star speed to 1. Test this. So let's full screen and see how this enemy spaceship dropper works. So we can see that the enemy spaceship droppers are going left and right, and then just shooting their bullets as needed. So now that there are no enemy spaceships on the scene, we should see more spaceships, but we can try to kill this. Boof. Okay, and yeah, that's basically it for this video. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something from it. And that's all we've done for this episode. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And in that episode, we'll be adding a main menu screen and a level select screen. So soon we'll be adding levels with the different enemies coming at different times. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Goodbye.